My girlfriend was planning Christmas with her ex, so I printed the emails and moved out, returned her dream ukulele, pulled the joint card invoice and calendar entry, changed the Wi-Fi, canceled the card, and moved away for good. Have you ever planned a surprise so big you could taste it, and then got told not to show up? That was me on a damp December afternoon in Port Townsend, Washington. My phone flashed a voicemail preview from my girlfriend, Maris, while I waited behind the Old Rose Theater. Her cheerful voice said, "Don't come to Christmas. Kellen will be there and I want to catch up." I listened again because my brain refused to accept it. In my truck was her dream gift, a handmade cedar ukulele I had ordered weeks ago. I had also planned a simple surprise after her family dinner, just the two of us and warm lights. In one voicemail, my careful plan turned into a question about my place in her life. I'm Bennett Quillen, 39, and I inspect fire sprinkler systems in public buildings. My days smell like wet concrete and metal and old dust from basements nobody visits. Maris is 38, an assistant principal at a middle school, always carrying a tote that smells like dry erase markers. We had dated a year and a half, and for 6 months we lived together in my split-level house up on Morgan Hill. Home had little routines that made it feel real. The entryway smelled like the pine wreath Maris kept replacing when it dried out. Her scarf peg squeaked every time she pulled one down. At night our dishwasher ended its cycle with a high whine, like a tired animal still doing its job. At work I run a pressure test on sprinkler lines before I sign off on a building. You close valves, watch the gauge, and wait for the quiet drop that proves a leak. Standing in that theater stairwell, I felt my own gauge fall and I tried not to show it. Mini hook, because it matters. A relationship can leak for months before it floods your whole life. I called Maris before the building manager even found the key to the riser room. She answered sweet and light, like she had just been thinking of me. I asked why she left that voicemail and why she was telling me not to come. She sighed and said it was simple and asked me to trust her. "Kellen is stopping by," she said, still soft. "My mom invited him, he wants closure, and I just want to catch up without tension." I told her we lived together, and she was telling her boyfriend to stay home for her ex. Mini hook, the person who tells you not to make it weird is usually the one creating the weird. I went into the riser room and did my inspection with steady hands. I watched gauges and checked valves while my mind kept looping one question. What kind of relationship needs me to disappear for an ex to feel comfortable? When I finished my report, my hands were calm but my chest was not. Kellen was not a mystery name. Maris called him in the past, but her family still welcomed him because he made custom glass ornaments every winter. He was about 40, and he showed up with boxes of shimmering stars and moons like he belonged there. I never asked Maris to cut him off, but I did ask for clear lines. When I got home, Maris kissed my cheek and acted normal. She talked about school while she packed cookies and cider for her parents' house. I said I did not feel welcome, and she smiled like she was calming a student. Mini hook, when peace requires you to leave, it is not peace, it is control. That night she fell asleep fast and I stared at the ceiling. I kept picturing the ukulele in my truck and the surprise I planned after dinner. I also kept hearing her say, "Catch up," like it was harmless. The silence in our bedroom felt louder than any argument. On December 23rd, I drove to the luthier's shop near the marina and held the ukulele one last time. I asked if I could return it, and the maker looked at me with quiet pity. He said he would take it back only before Christmas, and asked if I was sure. Practical advice number 1 is plain: do not use a dream gift to cover a waking problem. I walked out with empty hands and a heavy chest. Maris got home that afternoon and saw my empty hands right away. She asked where it was and her voice went flat. I said I returned it because I was not skipping Christmas so she could catch up with her ex. Her sweetness snapped into sharp edges and she called me insecure, like I was punishing her. Then she hit me with the line that always sounds like a warning: "People see their exes, be mature." I stared at her and felt something inside me go quiet. Mini hook, The first time someone calls basic respect insecurity, pay attention. I opened the closet and pulled out a suitcase. I packed slow and steady because my hands needed something to do. I told her I was leaving and I would not fight for a seat she already gave away. Confrontation 2 ended with her staring at me like I was the problem she wanted to solve. I slept that night in a small camper trailer behind my coworker's rigging shop. It smelled like propane and old coffee, and the heater clicked every few minutes. I stared at the low ceiling and wondered what I still did not know. Mini hook: when the story does not add up, it usually means there is a page you have not seen. Christmas Eve morning, an email alert hit my phone from the joint card Maris and I used for groceries and bills. The subject line said an invoice was ready, and my stomach tightened before I opened it. It showed 2 tickets on a Harbor Light dinner cruise on December 26th. Maris was the buyer and Kellen was listed as the guest. There was even an add-on called Couples Photo, and that word burned. I called Maris and she answered with no hello, saying what like a slap. She said it was not what I thought and told me to stop digging. Practical advice number 2 is boring, but it saves pain. If you share money, keep clean records and trust your eyes. That night my laptop pinged with a shared calendar reminder I had forgotten about. It read, Christmas Day 1030 a.m., brunch Fort Worden Inn, table for 2. The note field said, bring the star ornament, and the entry had been created weeks ago. Mini hook: it was not just Christmas, she had scheduled a replacement. I printed the calendar entry and drove to my house, knocking instead of using my key. Maris opened the door, startled, then angry, like I was trespassing in my own life. She said it was nothing and accused me of making it into a crime. Mini hook: when someone calls your pain a crime scene, they are trying to erase the victim. I left because arguing in a doorway would not change a calendar. Back in the camper, dread settled in my stomach like wet sand. I felt the pressure test in my chest, the slow drop I had ignored for too long. So I did what I do at work. I checked the system for the source. On Christmas morning, I went back to the house when I knew she would be gone, because I needed tools from my garage shelf for an urgent inspection. The living room still smelled like pine and dishwasher soap, like nothing had changed. Her laptop was open on the dining table, and her email was still signed in. I did not go hunting for gossip. I looked for the truth I was already living inside. In her inbox, an archived thread sat under a bland subject line about ornament pickup. When I opened it, the tone changed fast, like a mask slipping. Maris wrote about wanting to feel like it used to, and she wrote about keeping me away so it would be easy. Mini hook: the hardest proof is the one that confirms what your gut already knew. I saved the thread as a PDF and printed it, because paper has a weight that a screen does not. Then I put the pages in my folder with the voicemail transcript, the invoice, and the calendar entry. If I was going to end this, I wanted a clean file. I wanted facts because this was my pressure test, not another round of feelings. Maris called me that afternoon, crying so hard her words broke apart. She said Kellen brought his pregnant fiancée, and when the fiancé read the emails, Kellen stepped back and blamed Maris to save himself. She said her dad would not even look at her. Mini hook: when consequences arrive, some people blame the messenger, not the message. I told her I did not write those emails, she did. She begged me to come talk and fix the disaster in her living room. I said I was not coming and I hung up. My hands shook after, but my decision stayed steady. On December 27th, I moved the rest of my things out while she was at work. I changed the Wi-Fi password and removed her from my shared cloud album because shared life should not linger like a ghost. I canceled the joint card and updated my insurance beneficiaries that same night. Practical advice number 3 is simple when you leave. Close the practical doors first, so your heart has fewer reasons to reopen. That week I met an older lawyer late at night in a 24-hour print shop in Port Angeles. The air smelled like hot toner and rain-soaked wool, and the floor was gritty with salt from boots. She listened, asked 3 sharp questions, and said, 1 meeting, 1 folder, no more phone fights. Mini hook: the right help does not hype you up, it calms you down. We met at the Jefferson County Dispute Resolution Office, a bland room with gray chairs and a clock that ticked too loud. Maris walked in with puffy eyes but a neat outfit, like she was going to a school conference. This was confrontation 3, and I kept it tight and simple. I said she told me not to come to Christmas so she could catch up with her ex. She shook her head fast and said I was twisting it, and deny came first, right on time. I slid the voicemail transcript across and said that was her voice. She said it was to avoid drama for one day and that I made it into a breakup. Minimize followed right behind it like a shadow. I slid the invoice screenshot across and said 2 tickets, our card, his name. She whispered that she panicked and her mom pushed her and she thought it would end, and partial admit finally showed up. Then she leaned forward shaking and said she lost her family's respect in one night and might lose her job. Emotional move arrived last, wrapped in tears and pleas. Mini hook. Love that shows up only when consequences arrive is not love, it is panic. I set the printed email thread on the table and said she planned it and asked me to stay away. She stared at the paper and whispered she did not think I would leave. I told her that was why I had to. I sent one final email that laid out the move out, the card closure, and the date she could pick up her remaining items with a witness. Then I blocked her number for 30 days, not forever, just long enough to stop the cycle. I went back to work because work was the only place my head stayed clear. Even there, the story still echoed in quiet moments. 2 weeks later, the school district placed Maris on administrative leave, and a board review was scheduled for January. Parts of that email thread had been sent from her school account during work hours, and a complaint reached district HR. I did not file it and I did not celebrate it, but I also did not rescue her from it. Mini hook. Consequences do not always come from revenge. Sometimes they come from the truth getting forwarded. Work became steady again. In a gym renovation, I ran a pressure test and watched the gauge hold solid and calm. I realized I had not thought about Maris for a full hour, and that felt like air returning. Healing did not feel like fireworks. It felt like normal minutes. By late summer, I took a lead inspector role covering the whole peninsula. I trained new techs and taught them to trust numbers and not guess. If the gauge drops, you do not argue with it, you find the leak, or you walk away. That lesson fit people too. In October, Maris tried to reach me through a LinkedIn message asking for one coffee to clear the air. I read it once and did not reply, because my boundary was my closure. Mini hook. Sometimes the best ending is the one you do not reopen. A quiet no can be stronger than a loud speech. That winter, I transferred to a new district and moved to Coos Bay, Oregon. The coast felt wide there, and nobody knew my old story. I rented a small cottage facing marsh grass and started building a quieter life. I met someone steady through a coastal bird rescue class, and we took things slow. On a rainy night in December, a year after that voicemail, we ate dinner at a quiet harborside cafe where the windows fogged and the soup came in heavy bowls. She asked what I learned from my last relationship, and I kept it simple. I said, if someone asks you to disappear for an ex, you do not shrink, you leave. Thank you so much for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel.